also saw a beautiful, peaceful protest yesterday. 15,000 Oaklanders marching, demonstrating their desire for a just system and a demand for change and racial justice. It was organized by Oakland youth, supported by families, and we are very proud of that beautiful demonstration of a demand for change coming from Oakland, California. Unfortunately, later in the evening, there were disturbances, there were threats to officer safety, as reported, that did cause the use of non lethal munitions as well as tear gas. And I want to assure people that we take this very seriously. We're in a moment of national anger about the abuse of police force and governmental authority. And so we take the use of force in this moment especially seriously. We want to assure you that we are here to explain the actions taken, what the policies are behind those decisions, but most importantly, to say that if you have any concerns that you have been mistreated by the Oakland police or any of the partner agencies that have been here in Oakland during this time, you have the right to file a complaint and it will be thoroughly investigated. We take use of force extremely seriously, and we have processes in place to ensure that we will do a thorough evaluation after the fact, regardless of whether complaints are filed or not. If anyone in the public has concerns or wants to file a complaint about any police actions now or at any time, they can contact our Citizen Police Review Agency at 238-3159. Again, 238-3159. There's also an app that you can download from the City of Oakland's app site, again, for the CPRA. We continue to be committed to create safe spaces for people to express their righteous grief and anger over the events in this country and over the conditions in our society. We also are absolutely committed to public safety, and we are doing what we can to prevent and hold accountable people who would do damage, who would commit violent acts, who would commit vandalism or theft in our beloved city. Finally, I want to remind people that Oakland is a city that is committed to the work of racial justice. And we encourage people to get involved, to continue this work. It will take everyone in this community to move forward. And whether that is getting involved with the work of our Department of Race and Equity, our Department of Violence Prevention, or our piloting of different types of non-police response to emergencies. This is all work that is getting done in Oakland that we have been committed to and that we will continue to lift up and accelerate in the midst of this national crisis. And with that, I'm very pleased to call up for some more specifics about the events of last night. Deputy Chief, oh, that's all right, go ahead. Deputy Chief LaRon Armstrong.
Thank you, Mayor. LaRon Armstrong, LeRonne, So I just want to take you through the events from last night and starting off with yesterday. Yesterday, 4,000 youth-led Oaklanders came out to Oakland Tech High School for a peaceful march. That march reached a number of 15,000 participants and community members. Both included not only students, but also family members and people from all throughout the Bay Area in our community. They came out, they showed out in great numbers, and even my own daughter participated in that march. That peaceful march marched all the way down to 14th and Broadway and entered into Frank Ogawa Plaza, where they had speeches, where young people spoke out about the racial injustice that they've seen across this country, and they exercised their First Amendment right, and they did it peacefully. After concluding their event, those young people departed from the downtown area. That crowd went from 15,000 to about 1,000 people still remaining in the area around 14th and Broadway. That 1,000 crowd, that 1,000 individual crowd, at some point began to march towards 8th and Broadway. They then gathered at 8th and Broadway, and then they began to chuck rocks and bottles at Oakland police officers and other outside agencies that were assisting the Oakland Police Department. At that time, the department began to make announcements that this was an unlawful assembly. At that time, officers were still receiving rocks and bottles being thrown, as well as people preparing Molotov cocktails to throw towards the officers. Officers allowed those individuals that wanted to vacate the area to quickly leave the area. We provided multiple announcements, and we ensured that those announcements could be heard not only blocks away, but also from our helicopter. We also took photos. After the announcements, we made sure that there were no elderly or children that were participating in that particular group. That was important because we want to distinguish that this was not the same group that was at Frank Ogawa Plaza participating in the very peaceful march. This was an entirely different group. At some point after continuing to throw rocks and bottles, officers did deploy tear gas. This crowd then broke up and splintered into several groups, hundreds of which moved into the downtown area. At this time, no curfew orders had been issued to these individuals. We continued to monitor their activity. We then began to give additional commands that this was an unlawful assembly. At 8 o'clock, our officers then began to make announcements around the curfew issue. That 8 o'clock was reached, and now we were asking people to leave the downtown area. Those that were there continued to not comply with those orders, and we continued to give those orders and allow people to leave who wanted to leave peacefully. Officers then were engaged again with rocks and bottles and other things. At some point, we did effect arrests. Individuals that refused to leave for violating the curfew were arrested. And currently, we issued approximately 60 some odd cites. So each person was cited and released. Nobody was transported to jail. They were cited and released. Officers also found a gun as well as other things hidden in the bushes. So some people there were armed with weapons. We also recovered rocks, bottles, and boards. Some later that night, we also had to address some additional issues. So by the utilization of the curfew, we were able to shrink that crowd in the downtown and shift to some other public safety issues. Issues that related to looting our businesses, committing violent crimes throughout the city. So we took those additional resources that we now had available because we no longer had crowds in the downtown, and we shifted them to focusing on helping secure our businesses, where we had received multiple calls of looting throughout the city in a very orchestrated manner from a group of individuals. So I'll stop with that, Mayor. And,
Next up, we have two beloved members of our community. We do know that tonight there is a peaceful protest planned in the Fruitvale neighborhood of Oakland. And so two wonderful leaders from that community are Jane Garcia, the CEO of La Clínica de la Raza, and Chris Iglesias, the CEO of the Unity Council. Jane.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Jane Garcia, Jane Garcia, Garcia, and I'm the CEO of La Clínica. La Clínica is a 49-year-old federally qualified health center born out of a movement of the civil rights movement of the 1960s. We believe that everybody has the right to access healthcare, and that's why we exist. We understand the pain and the anger that our community is feeling, and we feel it too. I have grandchildren that are of mixed race. Some of my friends were at the event yesterday as well. And just recently, in fact today, I came back from a new testing site that we've set up in the Fruitvale so that we can increase the number of people that we are able to test. And we know that our community is being disproportionately affected by the pandemic, by the virus. We are reporting close to a 30% positive rate. That is not what the rest of the community is experiencing. So we understand the issue of discrimination and not being treated equally. So it's for this very reason that we are concerned about what's going to happen to our communities and to urge our colleagues to please respect the businesses and the organizations and the nonprofits that are there. The COVID pandemic is an outcome of the social injustices, of the inequities that are in our system. And today we had to close our clinics early. We had to board up in preparation. This past weekend, our optometry clinic was vandalized. We now have graffiti in a number of our buildings. And so when we are struggling and working to make sure that there's more equity in our communities, it breaks our heart to see this kind of events happening in our very community. So we're with you. We know that many of our patients that are suffering don't have access to enough food. They don't have access to income right now, and they're disproportionately hurt by what's going on. So this added burden of not being able to receive services when they need it because we have to lock down hurts us and is counterintuitive to the very reasons that this movement is so active and so vibrant. So here today to say we understand the anger, we understand the movement, and we are very much a part of it. We're from that movement. But let's not have our movement contaminated by this other message of looting. We're in it together and we'll come out of it together. Thank you. Chris Iglesias, Unity Council.
Thank you, Jane. Excuse me. Mrs. Mayor, thank you for your leadership. Chief, my name is Chris Iglesias. I'm the CEO of the Unity Council. We are La Clinica's older sibling. So we're about 55 years old. Also started back in the civil rights movement in 1960. So we know about the movement. We know about protests. We know about using your voice to affect change. And we've been doing that for a long, long time. And we understand the pain that the community is feeling right now. We're also big employers. We have almost 300 employees, most of which live in Oakland, most of which live in East Oakland, most of which are people of color who teach in Head Start and who are out on the streets with our social enterprise, as well as Jane. Jane has over 1,000 employees, right? The Fruit Fail is a welcoming place. It's a culturally place. You know, we work with over 300 businesses just within the Fruit Fail. African American businesses, Asian, Latino, Arabic, you name it. That's why they call it International Boulevard. And it's home, and we want you there. And we want to see gatherings, but we also want to see restraint. I think one of my biggest concerns is, as Jane mentioned, the needs in the community with this pandemic are basic, right? Like the Bay Area's done a great job of flattening the curve and keeping folks out of the hospital, which is great for the healthcare system, right? But the needs in the community like East Oakland and the Fruitvale, have just shot straight up, and they're basic. They're food, their money, just basic resources. So tomorrow morning, very close to where this protest is being planned tonight, we will be doing our Wednesday food distribution. We're distributing over 400 bags of groceries to families, to children, to seniors, not to mention 1,200 prepared meals from restaurants in partnership with World Central Kitchen. There are so many people that have stepped up to the plate to help serve the community. World Central Kitchen is activating, I don't know how many restaurants in and around Fruitvale. So we're actually able to open restaurants, get their staff back in, and most of these are run by women, immigrant women, organic food, the best food you want, and it's being funded by these foundations like Eat, Learn, Play Foundation, Steph Curry, Aisha Curry. The Alameda County Food Bank has been doing amazing. So there are so many people that have stepped up to meet these basic needs, and we need to keep doing that. And so we just hope you gather, but do that cautiously and safely and respectfully of the folks that live there. Thank you very much.
That concludes our organized speakers. Do you have any questions? We also have been joined by Chief Mannheimer. Do you have any questions?
Mayor, is there any reason to believe that the people who lived last night from Oakland or not from Oakland?
I will let the chief respond to that because we are still looking at that information.
Sure. So we had a question from Susan Manheimer, Interim Chief of Police, City of Oakland. We did have a question regarding whether or not the folks who were looting last night were native or residents of Oakland. And as the mayor alluded to, we don't have all the information yet. What I can tell you are there are really three elements or components to what we've seen over this last 4 or 5 days. As we've all spoken to, there's the meaningful hurt individuals who want to express their grief, their anger, their frustrations and tensions, and we stand with them for what happened in Minneapolis. That was unacceptable. And we are providing safe places and safe spaces. And you saw yesterday a demonstration of 15,000 of our community who were able to do so. However, there is a second component. That component is very troubling. It is agitators and an organized movement that would seek to harm and damage, disrupt, loot, and vandalize our community. And they have for the past 3 or 4 nights, Chinatown or downtown, various areas, and it's been very destructive and very harmful. They've been attacking our officers in our police building, and we're very appreciative that the city has given us the tool of the curfew simply really to interdict and abate that violence. So that is the curfew tool that we're going to use. There's a third issue, and that is looting that's happening in our neighborhoods throughout the night and even into the morning. Dangerous looting, and for that we are utilizing our mobile field force, and that is a various mix. It's a diverse mix, internally, externally. But for those agitators, that second group that really did the massive amount of destruction, we believe that those are sort of an organized element that moves around and really co-opts meaningful, peaceful demonstrations for those acts of violence. And that's really the areas and the folks that we're targeting. I can tell you there were no juveniles in that group yesterday. We are collecting that race and demographic data because we do believe that they are outsiders who would endanger our businesses and our community. Thank you.
Can anyone speak to the murder of the federal officer?
I don't know if we have any further information. I mean, I can talk high level about it.
Yeah, I will tell you because we're working daily with the Federal Bureau of Investigations, and they did take over this investigation. They're very interested. They'd like to know if anyone at all has video of the area. We have reason to believe that these individuals were targeting uniformed officers. We know that they were out and about in the area of where our officers and others were stationed, and that ultimately came upon these 2 individuals who were off more in a secluded area. And so the FBI has taken it over. It's very distressing. Those were local, wonderful individuals. So we're asking now that if anyone has any video or other information, please bring it forward.
In light of that, does that change the way that you'll be policing events like this?
You know, in my 35 years, and many chiefs across the country have been talking about this, this is very delicate. The trigger point, pardon that use of expression, really emanated from a police use of force experience that was really tragic and very devastating and just something that we all stand against. And so there are those who will have anger and fear and frustration with the very symbol of those charged with protecting them. Where it crosses the line is when anyone tries to harm anyone else, including our officers who have been the target of significant rocks, bottles, Molotov cocktails, incendiary devices, and gunfire. We've had gunfire at our police building. We've had gunfire out on the streets, not only here, but in other areas of our county. And these 2 individuals are yet another tragic example. We have to protect those who will protect the rest of us and make sure we do it constitutionally, equitably, and fairly. But we can not allow for that type of fear or anger to anyone in our community.
Any further questions? With that, we thank you for your attention.